I guess that's exaggerating what's really going on. So the fundamentals are good. We actually saw a bounce back in the market in February closings. So that was like, okay, we're still below a year ago, but we're way up from December, and January were really tough, just about everywhere in the state. Just kind of frozen with, I don't know, the financial markets, rates reached their over 5% in November. There was just a lot to be worried about, and in addition to the things that are endemic to the housing market, which I'll be talking about. So we had a big push in more listings, and it's only more listings and a lot of listings because we've had no listings for so long. We're still below what we would consider a long-term normal trend, but compared to where we were, people are like, oh my God. And we're seeing much slower price appreciation, but we're still seeing predominantly positive changes in prices, just nowhere near the double digits for the last year and a half, but kind of low single digits at this point. But it's important to keep in mind that there has been a shift in the market, and that's what your clients are going to want to talk to you about. What's going on? What's changed? Buyers are like, woohoo, there's so much to look at, I'm going to underbid everything. And sellers are still going to be in the mindset of about 18 months ago, right? And they're going to need to be talked back down to reality. So we can do this, it's just going to be a little bit different. Run a couple of macro slides just to give you a feel for what the landscape is in terms of the national economy. We did not come roaring out of the financial crisis of 10 years ago, really ever. I think maybe we had 1 or 2 quarters that we were, close to 5% growth, but essentially it's been a 2 to 3% recovery world for quite some time. We're expecting to see slower growth in 2019. That's one of the reasons why you've seen the Fed back off its rate increasing cycle, but we're pretty happy now. This year, we need to jump ahead for a second here and show you the second quarter growth was 4.1%, and that's in part been powered by the tax cuts that we saw, particularly on the corporate side. Has anybody here done their taxes for this year and had a surprise? Anybody surprised? I've certainly, just anecdotally, had people say, wow, I never owe anything, and I owed a lot this time. So I think the overall impact of that tax bill has yet to be realized. It was pretty much anti-housing, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think it's one of the things that's playing into what we're seeing with first-time buyers at the lower end. But more on that later. Let me go back here and just tell you, consumers, you may have seen the headline, consumer debt is at levels that we haven't seen since 2008. It's not mortgages. It's student loans and it's auto loans. It's not the mortgage market, and I think that's important to keep in mind. It's not the let's freak out level that we saw back then. CPI's been great. Labor market's still very tight. There's a mismatch between what people are hiring for and what people are going to school for. And given how expensive school is today, it's really important to look at that as an investment. You don't want to invest a lot of money in something that isn't going to get you into a career that repays that investment. So let's say you have $200,000 in debt, but you have a medical degree from Stanford. You probably made a good investment. If you have the same debt and you're going to be a cook, and now you're doing prep work at the local Wendy's or something, then probably not a good investment. So that's really important. You saw the GDP numbers. The tightest labor market in the country is in Silicon Valley, right? It's just there, and that's why in-migration is so important to the tech companies, because they just aren't able to find the skilled workers that they need, or enough of them kind of grown domestically. But even up here in the Central Valley, we've got unemployment rates in the high single digits, but typically they're twice, that's been twice what they are now. So we've seen a really big recovery in terms of the job sector. We kind of look at every month at what the Consumer Confidence Index is, and it's a monthly survey asking 5,000 households, how you doing? You're making big purchases in the next 6 months. How's your job? You'll be changing jobs. So there are questions about how they're doing today, and there are questions about how they expect to be doing in the future. And we had a big drop between February and March, and that was, who knows what it was, but the variables that changed is we had a very disappointing February jobs report. We've also had data on China and Europe, where those economies aren't doing as well as were expected. You've got, kind of stock market issues maybe for somebody, even though things have come back a lot. I'm not really sure, but those are what I would kind of look at. And as you heard earlier from our wonderful mortgage team, rates are like, oh my gosh, as I mentioned in November, we were over 5%, and now we're drilling down to almost 4% for 30-year conforming. So that definitely, I could not agree more. That's a conversation that we need to have with clients, especially those that have, buyers that got discouraged and said, I give up. It's like, well, you know what, there's more on the market, and it's going to cost you less, so why don't we look around and see what's there. Here's a look at the Fed funds rate. This starts in 2001, and it just shows you the continuation of that very low rate thing to kind of juice the economy and get things back going again. And then since 2000 and, when was the first one? It was December 2015. We had our first rate hike. We've had 9 since then. And what we've heard in the last month or so from the Fed is, we're done, right? We don't want to take the punch bowl away when the party's still kind of just getting going. We really don't want to be the skunk at the picnic. I think they got the message from the president, and it probably is a very good sign because the bond market kind of calmed down and we're back on track again. So let's take advantage of it. There are always, we can spend the whole day talking about the economy, and usually after I speak, someone comes up and says, well, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this. So here are all the things I'm not going to talk about, but I just want you to know, I get it, there are issues. I'm happy to engage afterwards or at another time on any one of them and what the impact will be. If you want to talk about GSE reform, Barbara's right here, and she's like an expert on the government's on Fannie and Freddie, so she's right here happy to talk to anybody about that. But I will say, with respect to the Bay Area, the IPOs for this year look pretty rich, and they will impact the housing market because there isn't much, even with the increase in supply, there's still no supply, right? And one of the things that's really interesting about the stock market is sometimes when it gets crazy, people want to buy homes more, right? Because that's a real asset. So a lot of money coming in. I think these are all of the big ones, but it's going to be a very interesting year for IPOs and overnight millionaires with their RSUs. And then these are just some data points on the Bay Area economy, which even though you're not technically Bay Area, we categorize you as Central Valley. You really are kind of Bay Area, right? You are very much tied to what's going on over the hill. And it is an economic juggernaut. It is a powerhouse. There is nothing like it in the rest of the country, and it shows no sign of slowing down yet. But I would just like to say, and I'm probably going to be long retired before this happens, but you can't grow forever without housing. You cannot do it. And when you look at the new Apple campus where 12,000 people work, and Cupertino did not add one housing unit to accommodate that, and I'm sure it was one of those things like, well, if you're going to make us do that, we're going to go somewhere else. And I'm sure the city council there had no problem saying, oh, darn, we can't add any more housing because we won't get the campus anyway. But you've got that multiplied over and over and over in the Bay Area, and at some point, push is going to come to shove, because again, the growth is going to be somewhere else. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay. But be prepared. So 19th largest economy, highest per capita GDP for a metropolitan statistical area, 26% increase in jobs since 2009, over 750,000 tech workers, and migration is a net positive with a net inflow of 58,000 from out of the outside the U.S. So that's kind of that brain attraction that you need there. So let's talk about us for just a minute. This slide shows you home sales in California, and for most of us, no surprise, it's a very, I don't want to say volatile, it's a cyclical market, right? We've got kind of 10-year cycles until now. And then the red line is membership in the California Association of Realtors. So the traditional relationship was really clear. The market peaked, 2 years later, membership peaked. Market peaked, membership peaked. Market peaked, membership peaked. And then what happened? Well, you can see how lackluster our recovery has been in terms of the number of transactions in California. And yet we continue to get members. And 2018 we came in at slightly above 205,000 realtors and a little bit over 400,000 transactions, or about 800,000 plus sides. So you do the math, right? We've got some excess supply on the agent side. Here's another way of looking at it. This is a 30-year period from 86 to 17. Population went from 27 million to 39. This year we're actually reaching 40 million Californians. I mentioned realtors, so 2017 we were at 20,000, 1986 we were at 112. But look at home sales, from 394 to 424. So that's, the pool is richer, but it's smaller, right? Dollar volume is up, but the number of transactions is really stalled. And that's a couple of things, right? That's the building side with new supply, and it's the fact, is there anyone here that's been in their home over 20 years? So you're the problem, right? Because you are not moving. You are the problem. And you multiply that by every other homeowner baby boomer who really doesn't want to or can't afford to move. And that's what we're dealing with. And eventually there'll be lots of probates and people pass on, right? But, the boomers aren't going out without a fight. They're spinning, they're getting their face done. I mean, this is like, we're going to stay young forever. And then if you just do the math in terms of membership and sales, early 70s, we had about 10 sides per member, and now we're in the 4 range. So here's something you need to know. Your competition is not 205,000 other realtors. And it's not even membership in the Santa Cruz Association of Realtors, which is, Kathy, what's your membership today? $13.50? It's not even that. Your competition is you yesterday and every agent working just as hard as you do. So the key to success is don't let anybody work harder than you do, right? I mean, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. So I want to turn up the market, and I'm going to start with just a reminder of where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, 60% of the closings in California were REO. You know what that is? Real estate owned by who? By banks. Wow. 10% were short sale, and 30% were traditional equity sale, which today is, almost 100%. So the reason I think this is important is if you draw a line up, January of 2014, to me that's the demarcation between the recovery and the new normal market, right? Because by January 2014, we had sold off the distressed properties. So I don't want to use the word recovery, and I don't want to think about, oh, I can't wait till we get back to the way things were back then, because that's past. So we've had a shift in the market. You felt it? No, yes, yeah. That's why we're at the bar, right? It's a little crazy. So here's 2018. We had almost a 6% drop in sales in 2018. As I mentioned, December and January were really low, and we had a big bounce back up in February to just shy of 400,000 transactions sold. And your data is, I got a lot of local data, your data is very similar to what we're seeing nationally. And then I just, here we bottomed in terms of sales in the fall of '07, boomed back up. These are investors, these are people using tax credits. And then since 2011, our market has been fluctuating between a very narrow band. And at the same time, we've had job growth, household growth, the lowest mortgage rates we've had in 50 years. Where's the response? Where is it? Well, that's what I said earlier, right? We're not building enough, people aren't moving, and housing's too expensive in California for people to buy. So when people say, like, the market's been so great, I know they're talking about prices. I know they're talking about prices because they can't be talking about transactions. On a year-over-year basis, you can see what happened in 2018, starting in about April, is when we started to be below a year ago. And here's the twist. We are seeing a slowdown in sales at the entry level. And we've seen softness in the upper end over the last couple of years, but the entry levels remain strong. And that's not what's happening over the last year. We have, don't you remember me always saying, if only we had more inventory, we'd have more sales? Well, we have more inventory, we don't have more sales. So what is that disconnect? So in every single price category, you've had a drop in activity. What's going on with prices? Well, we peaked in the middle of 2018. I think we had 1 month where we were actually at 600,000 for a statewide median, and then we started marching down before we should, right? Rates are usually soft in the fall and the winter when the market isn't as strong, but we started to see it before then. So in February, we had a statewide median of about 534,000. I wanted you to see how diverse the state is. So this is the Bay Area, and what I've done here is identify the peak month during the financial boom, housing situation crisis. And most of these were in 2007 and 2006. And then I've had a limited staff lately, so I don't have them update this every month, but it'll give you the point I'm trying to make. Here, toward the end of last year is what the median price was. And you can see in San Francisco, we were almost 65% above the prior peak, right? Alameda was 27. Solano's still below. Sonoma is about flat. Then what have I got now? Southern California. So only Orange and San Diego were above that prior peak. I'm not looking at the prior peak as some kind of equilibrium benchmark. I just know that for consumers, like if you have a stock portfolio and it's here, and all of a sudden it's here, you feel like you lost money, even though you really didn't, right? You didn't sell it up here, right? But even though your house was worth this much and now it's here, it didn't really mean that you lost money, but it feels that way. So that's kind of a psychological thing I'm looking at. So for SoCal as a whole, down about 6%. Here is the Central Coast, Santa Cruz above the prior peak, San Luis just a tad, Monterey and Santa Barbara, which are both counties that have a very high-end market and a very, I don't want to say low-end, but entry-level market, so that maybe it's always a little bit funky. And then here's the Central Valley, where everybody, including Sacramento, is still above that prior peak. So the recovery in terms of prices is directly tied to jobs, right, and demand for housing and inventory. That's, it's demand and supply. It's not rocket science. Here's a look at the ratio of listings to sales. It's been going up a bit. The trend line since 2018 has been higher. If you were looking at 1985 to 2010, on average inventory was about a 6 to 7 month supply. Then we got into the 3-month supply area, and now in February we were at 4.6. So it's definitely higher, but it's not as if we're awash in inventory. Inventory is really important. When people ask me what is the one variable that you look for when you are kind of focused on where the market's going, I always say look at inventory. That will tell you everything about where the market is going. And what we started to see in January of 2018 is that the drop in inventory, right, that it started in 2015, started to get smaller, right? The difference between this year and last year started to shrink. And then beginning in January of 2018, we started to get more listings than the prior year. So it was at this point that we said, we gotta watch this, and we were not disappointed. But look at what's happening over the last 2 months. The increase is slowing, right? The increase in inventory is decelerating. I think that's very good for anticipating more balance in this market between demand and supply. Here's a look at where listings are January, February compared to this year, just in terms of the count for the state as a whole. So still above, but not as much above. I don't know what I just did, but don't do it again. Okay. And then active listings are up pretty much across the board in terms of price category. And then here's the problem. Listings are up and sales are down, right? This is the disconnect that we're going, wow, that's something we need to pay attention to. And then here's a breakout of price growth, change in prices by region. So I think what you take from all this data is there's some mega trends or major trends going on, but you've got a lot of variation within every single area. And you'll see that in a minute when I get to Santa Cruz, right? There are cities that are growing, and there are cities that have pretty significant sales loss. The change in prices vary from location. I also want to make a point again about headlines versus what's really happening. So you're getting this headline about relatively small increases in prices, and certainly on a year-over-year basis, you're seeing, on a month-over-month basis, you're seeing some drops. But what we've done here is we've compared the median price with the price per square foot. And what it shows in many areas of the Bay Area is the price per square foot drop is much smaller, right, than the median price of what was sold. So that means you're selling more smaller homes, right? And so you've got a bigger kick when you're looking at houses if you don't adjust for the mix. If you were to adjust for the mix and just look at the same size of home, the change in prices down is much, much smaller. So there's always like a zillion nuances to this. The other information that you should probably share with your sellers is that almost 4 out of 10 listings have a price reduction before they sell, right? And a price reduction before you sell tends to not always be a great thing in terms of your presentation to the market. And this is just another indication that you've got sellers kind of highballing the market and buyers kind of maybe lowballing the market, and they've got to meet somewhere in the middle. So we've got more adjustments going on there. So these are all of the counties that are impacting you the most: Monterey, Santa Clara, San Francisco, and San Mateo. And then I'm going to show you just Santa Cruz. I just wanted you to note that pretty steep drop that was throughout the region in terms of home sales, and this is the percentage change, right, on a year-over-year basis. So throughout most of 2018, you've had a pullback in the number of transactions. So if I were to ask you how's the market in Santa Cruz, what would you say?
think it's great.
Okay, low inventory. At least you're not saying, like, what was the thing, like the code said, like, it's fabulous, it's incredible.
Cautious.
Unbelievable.
That's it, that's what I was looking for. It's unbelievable. Well, it is, let's believe it, okay? So here is the Santa Cruz home sales going back to January '09. I've actually already given Kathy this PowerPoint. You can click and look at all the data. You are welcome to copy any of my slides. You can put your picture on up here. You can do whatever you want with them because I work for you. So happy to share any of this information. And we've got Excel spreadsheets. I have a wonderful economics team back at CAR that makes me look so good. So here are the percentage changes. I don't know why that's there. The percentage changes, and you can see as we got into the middle of last year in Santa Cruz, we started to see some pretty, starting in July, and then it kind of started to gain some momentum in terms of a pullback in the market. Is that consistent with what you lived through?
Yes.
Was it just kind of like pretty abrupt?
Yes.
Yeah, right? And that's how things happen, you know. I remember in 2005, I just want to say it was someone that worked for me that said the dreaded words soft landing, which I will never say, except I think my tombstone should say, she finally got a soft landing. Now I forgot what I was going to make. But Joel's comment was, that really makes sense, everything you're saying, but you know what, I've never seen one. I've never seen a soft landing. And it doesn't mean it won't ever happen, but I think you need to be prepared for the power of the psychology of the market when things just turn off, and you can't really point to one reason, but sometimes it's just a cumulative effect, and boom. Sales dropped most at the lower end of the market in Santa Cruz. So when your low end of the market is 750,000, it's a lot of money for someone entering the market, right? You're really pricing the surfer community out of Santa Cruz, which you don't want to do, right? Because they're so great. And actually some increases here. Now, these increases look amazing, but it's probably, 3 houses to 6 houses. You know what I mean? You don't have a huge inventory to work out. There's 5 cities: Santa Cruz, Aptos, Watsonville, Scotts Valley, and that make up about 75% of the sales in Santa Cruz. Does that sound about right? No? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. And this is a look at year-to-date. So our year-to-date right now is January and February of 2019. So this compares these 2 months this year to the same 2 months last year. So in the plus category, we've got Santa Cruz, which is the largest market in terms of size, Scotts Valley, Los Gatos, Mountains, Capitola, and Freedom, which is a very small market, right? Unfortunately, Freedom. Aptos, Watsonville, Boulder Creek, Felton, Ben Lomond, and how do you say that? SoCal, right? Are down. Does that sound about right? Yeah. So it's a mixed bag, right? That's why they need a good realtor. In February, it took 56 days on average for a home to sell in Santa Cruz. Historically, that's not that long, but compared to 11, it's a lot different, right? So you need to educate your clients about what's changed in the market. Median time on the market is up pretty much regardless of the price category. The only drop was in the one and a quarter to 2 million, down a little bit. And here's a look at time on market across cities. So look at Scotts Valley. 32. That's really different than 57 or whatever that number was, right? So again, you can't paint this with a broad brush. And then this is the drop in the sales to list price ratio, and it's only down to a little bit below 98%, but it's coming down, right? So it's showing the impact of that price discounting from the original list. And here's a look at the differential by price category. Got too much data here, and then here's the difference in terms of competitiveness, if you will, across all of the cities. So again, I think that's, I'm not sure why they're so different, and they're really very marginal differences, but it's interesting to see that. And then here's a look at just the listing inventory. So here we are in the beginning of 2019, and here we were in the beginning of 2018. So up just a little bit, and then here are the percentage changes, and then look at February. February's moving in the other direction, right? February was a little bit below February of a year ago. So that's a sign that things are kind of balancing out, right? You're not getting that deluge. And the strongest growth in listings is in the 1 to 1.25 million. The very low end is down, and at the very upper end it's down a little bit. And this is just the number of listings in terms of going up. Again, I want to caution that these numbers are pretty small, right? When you take Santa Cruz and then start to, when you take 80 sales a month and start to divide it out by city and look at percentage changes, it can be a little bit of an adjustment. Here is, oh, I know, it's not putting the actual number here, and I think that actual number is like 9, I hate that, 9 something. So median home price, it's been a little bit volatile up and down. Condo too, it looks a little bit like the condos have been leveling off a little bit. These are the year-over-year changes in price in Santa Cruz, and actually they've been pretty robust. When you look at the county as a whole, not what we're seeing up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Oh, here's a look at the median prices. So the entry level, you've got Boulder Creek, and then Lowland, and at the upper end you have Capitola, Aptos, and then Santa Cruz. So that's really one of the wonderful things about this county is you've got diversity, right? You do have some entry level housing available. And then here are the percentage changes in Capitola and Aptos up here, then Lowland and Boulder Creek down there. So if you were to ask me how's the market, I would say it's gone from great to good. I think sales have turned the corner from a very slow winter entry into 2019. I think the lower rate of price appreciation is actually a very positive thing. Provides a little more certainty into the market. The fact that you're not going to see just the acceleration in listings that we saw a year ago, I think is a very positive thing. I think the low mortgage rates and the price reductions that you're seeing to get properties sold is really good news for first-time home buyers. I think that's the group that I would be kind of looking out for, and just to set the expectations of sellers that it's going to take a little bit longer than it might have in the past. So I want to kind of do the last segment of my remarks on some of the major issues impacting the California housing market, and the one we really need to talk about is housing affordability. When we did this calculation last year, Santa Cruz had the worst affordability in the state. Now let me tell you what it is. This just says what percentage of the population that lives in the county can afford to buy the median priced home. So if your median priced home is $900,000 and you're looking at the whole county, only 12% make enough to do that, assuming 20% down in those kinds of things. So it's kind of a relative measure. For the U.S., it's 53%. For the state as a whole, it's 26%. So that kind of what? San Francisco's right here at 14. San Mateo, Mono County, just very low income. So again, There's no one way to measure affordability. In general, the tightest affordability is in the Bay Area because prices, as you saw, have gone up so high. Yes?
Are they using income from income here, or if people live here, the income they're receiving from driving them to a sort of
It's whatever income they have.
It is. So
yeah.
As long as they're living here, it's just...
Yeah, but you've got lower income people in the county that are kind of bringing it down. Obviously, for those people, they can buy whatever they want, but that's not the bulk of the market. Yeah. I'm happy to provide you with all of the background on these calculations too. We have sheets and all that kind of stuff. If you sold someone a home in 2011 or 2012, you should contact them. Certainly talking about change in rates would be maybe appropriate, but they've also experienced the highest equity gain of anybody in recent memory because they bought during the affordable window in California. And that's something that you should be proud of and they should be extremely happy about as well, because since affordability peaked in 2012, it's really been cut in California by almost half. Between 2012 and 2018 in San Francisco, the minimum income needed to qualify to buy the median priced home increased by 125%. I'm going to go quickly through these because they're so depressing. The home ownership rate in California is typically about a 10% gap. In 1960, it was a 3.5% gap, so this hasn't always been quite this big, heading up a little bit in the last year or so as we've had kind of good rates in a very strong job market with kids, getting married or, getting into the home buying process. I'm sorry. Did someone have a comment?
I think they're talking in the kitchen.
There's the kitchen.
Yes.
Do you want me to say something?
Yeah.
No. Okay. California is the second lowest home ownership rate in the country, second only to New York. We also have the largest number of homeless people. We used to say that's a social welfare issue, not a housing issue. But in recent years, homelessness has been highly correlated with housing costs. By 2025, we will be a majority renter state. And we already have a huge number, 42 of the top 160 cities are already majority renter. And the weird thing about this list is there are cities there that on the coast, we would consider them to always be so affordable, like Chico, right? The problem is they're not affordable for the people that live there, right? So they're getting priced out. So let me show you what this out-migration two-step looks like. We do a survey every year asking realtors about their last closed transaction. And between 2013 and 2018, the number of you that said your seller moved to another state went from 19% to 29%. Pretty big increase for just 6 years. Here's one of the profiles of a seller leaving the country, or leaving California. They sold their home in LA for $1.175. They had $1 million in net cash gain. They have $200,000 in income. They went to Utah. They doubled the size of their home and lowered their mortgage payment. They wanted to stay, but they couldn't. Since 2010, the net domestic migration out of California has been about 750,000 people. This isn't a huge number. It's a significant number, but it's not, I don't want to overstate my case, but I do want to make the point that we are always looking for the turn, the tipping point, if you will. So this is not births and in-migration from overseas. The California population continues to grow every year, but net domestic migration has been been negative since 2010. So there's a survey called the American Community Survey, which is just a wealth of information about what people are doing and how they're living and where they're going. And what we did is we asked the following question for this 7-year period. Where are people from the San Francisco Bay moving? You know, if they leave, where do they go? And what we found is they go to Sacramento and San Joaquin counties. The point I'm going to make here is that migration is a housing story. It's a housing story, because what do these two counties have? More affordable housing than we have in the coast. Then they went to Oregon, Texas, Nevada, Texas, Santa Cruz, Stanislaus, and you can read that. Then the next question we asked is, okay, where are the people in Sacramento going? Right? Where do they go? And they're the ones that leave the state, right? They are going to areas that have more affordable housing, or areas within California that have more affordable housing.
Except for Santa Cruz.
What?
Except for Santa Cruz. Which is
Well, you have some affordable housing here. You have, you know, right, I mean, it's not on the coast, but, you know, you saw the difference in the cities. So we need to build more housing. This is what Lakewood, California looked like in 1950, right? In 1950, they thought this photo was beautiful, right? This is post-World War II. I'm sure a lot of you, like me, had dads that came out of World War II and bought a home on the GI Bill, right? I grew up in Long Beach, right near here. I went online and found this list of international cities ranked by density. And here's just some of the things I found. You know, Shanghai's number 10, Mexico City's number 27, London's number 43. This is on the website of citymayors.com. I didn't find a US city until number 90, Los Angeles. Obviously, they're not looking it up, right? And then 104, San Francisco, Oakland. So this issue of density is really one of the core tenets of why we're not building, right? Because there are height limits, and there's just an aversion to density and a lack of the infrastructure and transportation to accommodate it. This was a doctoral dissertation that originally came out of UCLA, and I actually met the guy that did this, where he looked at how many, what population LA County was built up for. And it was built for, the city of LA, 10 million in 1960, and by 1990 it was 3.9 million. So this downzoning isn't something that was like imposed from above. These are conscious policies to restrict construction. And again, you understand what's going on. There are real trade-offs here. This is the median home price in California versus the rest of the country. Back in the early 70s, they weren't very different, right? And this is the impact of, you know, to a certain extent, you'd expect us to have, we've got these great jobs, we've got sunshine, but some of it is also supply restricted. There was a poll that was done in October, right before the midterms, out of USC and the LA Times, asking California voters, what do you think the cause of the California housing crisis, or why is housing unaffordable in California, something like that. And the number one answer was lack of rent control. Greedy landlords. Only 13% thought it was supply. I was shocked. I was very shocked. So at some point, a supply problem will become a demand problem, right? Because you'll see the jobs and you'll see people going elsewhere. And maybe you can't grow forever. I mean, maybe that's kind of what's already happening, right? People are making those decisions. So what do you need to do to be successful in this market? You are a teacher. You are teaching your clients about what's happening in the market. If you don't stage already, do you stage? Generally, most people do, right? But you've got to do it. People expect Pinterest-ready housing. Connect with people who may have dropped out of the market over the last couple of years and say, hey, it's a different environment. We did a study last year that of the over 6 million renters in California, about 800,000 qualify to buy the median priced home in their city. So there are renters out there that just don't know, and our surveys of renters indicate a complete lack of financial literacy when it comes to housing. Right? They think you need 30% down. They just know very little. Out-of-state referrals, if you're in a company that has, I don't know, leading RE, or you're part of a big national franchise, you do have people relocating out of California, so make those connections. Use the low rates as these won't last forever. Here's a window, let's do it. And certainly one of the things that we feel very strongly about at CAR is we need to keep selling homeownership because we feel that we have been under attack, right? That people just don't see homeownership the way that they should because it is so important. We know that most people who don't own do see homeownership as a part of the American dream. We know that 80% of renters do want to buy at some point, and about a little less than half of them want to buy within the next 5 years. So that's good. So here's the kind of summary of the GDP forecast. And the projection here, I'm sorry, I don't think I've updated this as well as I should have, but I think this number is more like 2.8. This is going to be about 2.4, a little bit slower job growth, the unemployment rate even a little bit tighter, CPI about the same, disposable income a little bit slower, and this used to be 5.2, right? And now it's 4.6. It could even be lower given what's happening. And then in terms of home sales, as I mentioned, we were down last year 5.2%. We're expecting about a 7% drop in sales this year, with about flat prices compared to a 6% increase last year. Affordability tighter, and again, a better rate environment. So everywhere I speak, people are kind of like, well, we don't really care about the state or anything like that because we are unique. And I hope in my remarks I've been able to say you are unique, but you are being impacted by the same forces that the whole state is being impacted for, because we're seeing this really in every single region and every single area that we track. So pullback in sales, a little bit of softening of prices in terms of the rate at which they go up. Buyers that are back in the market, but they're not desperate, right? They're not desperate to throw the money at a house. They're desperate maybe to just get a good deal and get in the market. Sellers are also always slow learners, and property will be on the market longer, but there will be some properties always that will go very quickly. So basically, general comments, specific, will all be surprised. So a couple of conclusions. Economy is strong, home ownership, people still want to own. Again, I think I covered all this stuff before. Okay, I can take that one out. My parting advice. I would love for my legacy at CAR to be a required annual CE course in active listening. So often we listen to wait to talk instead of listening to really understand. And I think every human being is in the listening business, but you guys really are in the listening business, right? You've just got to hear and be present with your clients. Talk to them about what's going on in the market. Explain the realities to the sellers. Reach out to millennials. They are, first-time home buyers are up. Millennial buying is up, and they are a different mix. Know your inventory and just continue to improve yourself. Just how important it is to always work on yourself. So the I want to stop or end with a couple other comments. Everyone kind of always asks me what I'm reading, because we always read books for strategic planning. And actually, this is not being read by strategic planning, although my entire staff is reading this for our offsite. So Frey was the head of the Southern District of New York for a number of years. And what I'm about 3/4 of the way through this book, and it's just absolutely fascinating, like how the law works and the inside scoop on some of these very high-profile cases, and understanding what the law is and what the law isn't. But it's also just an amazing take on leadership, working in teams, how to get things done, the value of research. Human nature. So if you want to know what I'm reading, it's this, and I really highly recommend it. And I just want to say again, your competition is always you yesterday, right? You start every day fresh, and never let anyone work harder than you do. So that's it. Thank you very much.